Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of The Real Podcasters, the show where, as ever, we're talking all things movies, TV shows, video games, and a bunch of other things in no particular order. My name's Regan, as ever, and I'm joined by my original co-host, it's Dan.
What do you mean original? I've been here since the beginning.
Supposed to remake.
Oh,
Dan, it was supposed to be a clever joke.
Well, I mean, I'm thicker than a castle wall, so how was I meant to get that?
Well, you called me a cannonball last time, so...
And you called me a cursed skeleton?
I did.
Serves you right. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Shout out to Jake at work who found that whole trading of insults at the beginning of last week's episode exceedingly funny. Damn him. Wasn't scripted at all.
No, it wasn't. It just sort of came out, yeah.
Happened. Yeah. But that's the kind of thing that you expect from, the intro of these podcasts. And if that is the sort of thing that you do enjoy, of course, any kind of support would be greatly appreciated. Links in the description to all of our listening platforms. At this point, I'm actually getting sick of listing every single one.
There are platforms.
Because I'm going to run out.
That's all you got to say.
There are several platforms you can listen on. If you're this far into an episode on one platform, you're like, no, I'd prefer the other one. Because there's probably something like
another
that.
7 odd platforms for you to listen to.
Something like that, yeah. And of course, our social media platforms, Instagram, we're on Threads. Again, try not to reference the movie. It's a bad idea. And we're both on Letterboxd as well, of which both are personal profiles as well, which I kind of forget that yours is still a personal profile now as opposed to a...
it hasn't really changed much. It's just kind of my name and everything I've watched.
Yeah, we're quite neck and neck now. This is like a proper race now for the rest of the year as to who can actually get the most amount at the end of the year. I think we're like 1 or 2 entries either ahead or behind. Not that I'm counting. I'm a little bit. I'm really paranoid like that. It's like, no, Dan cannot be ahead of me, even though most of them.
You're gonna just wake up one day and I'm gonna be like 17 films ahead or something like that. Well,
if you listen to the last episode of Graveyard Chit Chat, I beat you by 4 or 5.
Well, what
something
was
like
8 things he watched last time? Yeah,
something like that. I think you had 3.
I think it was 5. Yeah, something like that.
But yes, on last week's episode of Graveyard Chit Chat, we spoke about The Thing, which might be referenced again in this episode.
Possibly.
Probably.
Very likely.
And yeah, extremely likely. In that it's on the document, so it is. And then on last week's episode of The Real Podcasters, we spoke about the original Pirates of the Caribbean, celebrating its 20th anniversary. Or at least I rewatched it. Once again, Dan spoils things midway through. He's like, no, I didn't rewatch it. It's like, fucker.
I mean, I've watched it.
Luckily, I didn't have to worry about spoilers. Unlike Alien Isolation, which was still a bit of a hoot, to be honest, realising that you hadn't finished it.
Regan,
ever.
I don't know how many times,
Dan,
I have to say that game severely damaged my psyche. My already damaged psyche.
I was just about to say it. Anyway. But yeah, so this week we are talking about remakes, something we haven't really covered on the podcast before. We've done prequels and adaptations. I'm actually quite annoyed that we did prequels before Prey came out. Because in retrospect, if we did Prey and then the prequels, I think I know which would have won the best prequel.
Oh, for sure.
Not Bates Motel.
For sure.
Just because I've just randomly been watching clips of it again. I don't know why. I'm mildly obsessed with Prey now, as it turns out. But I thought this would be an interesting one to discuss, especially with Disney's track record of the last couple of years, where it's most of the things they put out is either Marvel or live action remakes, which should just be sort of live action, mostly animated remakes, because lots and lots of CGI.
Yeah.
This is now technically going to be the first of a 2-part narrative that we're doing. We're getting really dramatic like that. We're going Mission Impossible and Fast and Furious. Only because this kind of connects into what we'll discuss next week, which people have been keeping up with the writers and the actors strike. Hollywood in general is at a bit of a standstill, and I figured Remakes kind of covers that as well, because I mean realistically, remakes are a bit of a divisive thing to talk about. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, for sure. It's what's the word? No, I've lost it.
It's no.
It's no.
This is a remake of no.
No.
We're not doing that. So in terms of like my overall feelings on remakes, I mean they can vary. To be honest, I think my rule has always been I actually am more interested in a remake of a crappy film than I am of a remake of a good film.
So kind of
because
like
immediately I'm like,
My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah, actually. Ooh, that's a good point. I didn't actually put that on the list. I suppose I technically could.
Or even Evil
Or
Dead,
not.
for that matter.
Well, you see, that is technically on the list, but I can't count it because it's also a sequel-ish, even though it's just the exact same film again, except good.
Ow.
Ouch. Bet that hurt. Still does. Yeah, that's never not going to be funny in retrospect. But yeah, I figured it was going to be an interesting topic because, again, with Disney doing all their live action stuff, and it's one of the biggest issues with those ones is the fact that they either just do the exact same film again, so pointless, really. I mean, I know you don't watch those ones. That's very much a me one, or at least it was up until 2019, and I just stopped.
Yeah, I wonder
entirely.
why.
It's just a live-action furry film, The Lion King. I would rather it just be a furry film, to be honest. At least then it might be slightly different. Or they just play it extremely safe. Or just do something completely weird. So, I mean, like, as I said before, like for me, the ideal remake is the one that doesn't really... It's able to completely change itself, which should be the point of a remake. If people are curious on what I think between a remake and a reboot, I think for me, a good example of a reboot would be something like The Amazing Spider-Man. It's not a remake of the 2002 film, it's just a reboot of the franchise in general. Whereas a remake, like you mentioned with My Bloody Valentine, that's very much a remake of the original film.
Yes. It's kind of good that you mention that, because I know that some people do kind of get a bit confused with it because they think a reboot is actually the same as a remake, but in retrospective terms it is similar but not the same thing. I think
well even like a good example, and I use this as like an honorable mention, with Nosferatu the Vampire, which we spoke about not too long ago, and I class that as an honorable mention because technically you could argue it's a remake of the 1922 film, but then it's also it's a closer adaptation of Dracula.
Yeah.
So does that come under adaptation or a remake? I don't know. It's, that comes down to personal preference.
Yeah,
I
it's
think,
just
more than anything
subjective,
else.
really. It's how you actually see it and feel about it.
Similar to what you said with Evil Dead. For some, it's a sequel. For some, it's a remake. It's in a really awkward place, that one. I thought we would talk a little bit about some of the remakes that we do actually like, because initially when I started conceptualizing the ideas for my list, I couldn't really think. It was a bit like with good prequels.
It was difficult for me because I've mostly seen really, just quite average remakes, so actually like trying to pinpoint ones that I like was the challenge, really.
Yeah. Well, considering that I got 4 and you got, what was it, 20?
No, not 20.
Which we're not
I don't
talking
have 20.
Good.
I have around 5 or 6.
Okay. I mean, I guess structurally this might be a little bit similar to the top 5 ones we've done a couple of times, but it's not really. Like, this is not like the first one to talk about was my least favourite and the last one is the favourite. It just happens to be how I've actually done it mostly in chronological order, actually. But I am curious to see yours, because I feel like there's going to be quite a few of yours which I think are going to be horror remakes.
Yeah, you'd be correct.
Well, yeah, I usually am.
About 98.999999999 recurring.
9999999. Yeah, I'll take it.
I think we'll just start off with some honourable picks, really. So, while actually thinking of what remakes to put in for this episode. Starting off with the film that we talked about last week on Graveyard Chit Chat, and that is The Thing from 1982. I'm not going to say too much because, again, if you want to hear our thoughts on The Thing, you can just go and listen to that.
Very subtle.
And go listen to that episode. I still love it, and I will get to watching the original version of it from the 50s. I'm probably not missing I'm not missing out on too much, really. Yeah. I didn't think I would be.
Really
It's a terrific, very practical film. Possibly my favourite all-time horror film as of this month. Might change next month. I might see something absolutely extraordinary within the next couple of days. I doubt it, but...
I spat out my drink when you turned around and said that. I was like, after
everything you've brought me through.
Yes. All 14
after
of them.
The various shapes that I saw.
So disappointing. So
after
disappointing.
Very many shape-changing shapes.
Shape-changing shapes.
I still absolutely love it. Another film that we spoke about on a Graveyard Chit Chat episode before we covered Nosferatu was some monsters and horror film. And I went with Jackson Peter, or Peter Jackson's King Kong from 2005.
This list is going to be interesting.
And last but not least, we have a film from 2021.
How many films do I know from 2021 that are actually good?
I believe we actually saw this in the cinema. No clue? Candyman.
Yeah, we'll keep that as not... See, that's also an interesting one.
Yeah, because it depends on how you actually feel about it. I mean, I see it as a remake, personally, but...
Yeah, I can sort of see it. And then it's like, oh no, it's like it's like a canon-destroying sequel that just omits the other ones. I'm like, funny.
It's kind of like a 50-50.
Might as well be a remake. Cause
may as well.
Yeah.
But that's all the honourable ones. I mean, I was going to mention a dishonourable one, but, I thought I'd leave it to a good kind of one this time.
Well, to be honest, I mean, you could do dishonourable mention, but then it will actually be 20. At least.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you're just adding somewhere. Let's move on.
Yeah. Oh, God. I mean, I mentioned my honourable mentions being like the 2013 Evil Dead and Nosferatu the Vampire. I suppose I'll go with the first one, which you've already mentioned as your honourable mention. It was the first one you mentioned. The Thing from 1982. Which, to be honest, if we hadn't actually done the Graveyard Chit Chat episode on it, I probably wouldn't have put it on, because if you do go off and listen to that one, obviously I highly recommend it.
Please.
Please. You sound desperate. What's wrong? Please listen to it. But yeah, I didn't hold the film in that high regard until when I rewatched it for that. So, I mean, I have seen the one from the 50s. I'm not massive on it. I own it just for the sake of saying that I own it. And because I was curious as to what it was going to be like. It's very different.
50s, I can imagine.
Yeah, which I suppose that's one of the reasons why I love the 1980s one so much, is because it is completely different. It does take it completely in a different direction. Full-blown horror. Proper body horror as well. There's a lot of bodies.
There is.
Very, very different. There's a few. And it's a lot more memorable. Way more memorable. I mean, funny enough, when I've looked at my favourite remakes, this is literally where I think that the remake is actually better than the original film. So that's actually another thing. It's one thing to say it's a good remake. It's another to say it's better than the original.
Yeah, that's, I mean, just
really
as
dangerous.
an all, probably the best remake I've ever watched. That and 2017's The Mummy. I know, I'm kidding. No. Oh, God.
Sometimes I forget that film exists. I like that.
It's a good thing that you can't remember it. It's a good thing.
Very. All right then, Dan.
Okay. First up,
Bugger.
in this list, we have a film from 2009. I mean, you're not going to know because you haven't seen it. You haven't even seen the friggin' original, so how are you going to know?
That depends.
Well, maybe it just happens to be on a Friday, but the date is the 13th.
That's ballsy. You tell me that the remakes are actually any good?
I think the remake of the original Friday the 13th is actually slightly better than the film, the original.
Well, actually, to be honest, that's probably a good cop-out as well, considering that the remake does have Jason Voorhees.
Yep.
As Jason Voorhees that we know and love. Love.
I was going to say, love is not the word.
Yeah, we know and recognise. Whereas original Friday the 13th doesn't have that, which I didn't know about until you mentioned it. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so this one just totally ignores the whole Pamela Voorhees thing and just has Jason actually in it. And you know what it is? It actually is original in respect because it just cuts all that Pamela stuff out and Jason is a little bit different. Like, I mean, we all know slasher villains, you know, once they have their eyes on a target, they'll set out to kill them. But for some reason, Jason kidnaps people before he kills them. Which is...
That seems a bit pointless.
Yeah, I mean, he captures, like, one person and keeps them just locked in a cell in this dingy-ass basement. I don't know why.
I don't know why either.
I don't know, but yeah, 2009's Friday the 13th is the first.
Okay. Next up, I've got I've actually decided this is not in chronological order. I've just decided, just for fun. Next up is Let Me In from 2010, which is the remake of Let the Right One In.
I was actually quite close to watching that the other day, and if I did, this probably would have been on the list.
Yeah, it's very, very close, to be honest. One could argue the remake... I mean, this is done by bloody Matt Reeves, of all people. Goes on to do Planet of the Apes and The Batman. I said that with a bit of hesitation, like, he did that one.
He did, yeah.
Acting like it's a bad film, it's not. But this one is pretty close to the original. It just shifts it from Sweden to New Mexico instead. Kind of delves into the horror aspects, or at least in terms of like vampire stuff, a little bit more. And I think the relationship between the two kids, I think, is a lot stronger. But it is pretty much beat for beat.
Yeah,
doesn't really change anything. I think there's one aspect of Ellie in this case, as opposed to Abby. Was it Abby? I think it is Abby in the remake, and then Ellie in the original. Always get those two mixed up. I think there's an aspect of her character that they change around, but otherwise it's pretty much the original film, which I think for some people could be...
In vampire films, it's quite hard to like do a remake of this anyway. I mean, Let the Right One In anyway is quite a obscure vampire film in terms of being a vampire film, because it's always like, particularly vampire films I've seen, there's always like the vampire lord who basically resides in a castle.
Yeah.
This is completely and utterly different in terms of vampire film.
Yeah. It was also the first time I was introduced to the idea of vampires having to be invited into somewhere. And in this film we see why they have to be invited in, and actually walks in and then just starts to sort of like melt on the spot. Just nice and dark like that. But yeah, I mean, I've seen that sort of thing played out more as comedy nowadays.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure the first time I saw the whole like the vampire has to be invited in was Francis what's his face's 1992's Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, I didn't probably see that film until like 4 or 5 years ago. I was really late to it. So I had absolutely no idea. Unless it was in like original recipe Dracula, but I'm not entirely
Can't
convinced.
remember because it was a while ago.
I don't think. Yeah, I'm not big on the old one. I quite like the Bram Stoker's one though. I do like that one. But yeah, Let Me In is one I've always really liked. Haven't watched it for a very long time though. I'd have to give it a rewatch, but I do remember really liking it.
Okay. 1980s film next.
Great. Terrific.
By a Mr. David Cronenberg. It is The Fly.
I couldn't count it because I haven't seen the old one.
I know of the old one. I haven't watched it all the way through. I will get to it,
right.
But I think it's like quite late 50s. I think it's like 1958, I want to say. Something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, this is just another one like The Thing where it just outdoes the original so much.
See, I can guarantee that already.
Oh yeah, I mean it's kind of what I'm assuming the original Thing is. It's pretty tame in terms of like horror. I mean, there's horror stuff in it, but I mean in the remake, it's just all out. It's kind of like this, the body horror and stuff like that. It's absolutely all out. I really like this film. 5 out of 5 film for me.
Oh, definitely, same for me.
It's terrific. The practical effects and stuff. The score. I love the score.
The score is really, really good. I forget how bombastic and grand it actually is.
I love the theme of it as well. Just when it starts and you get that really nice theme going in. And I do own it on vinyl as well.
Is it the same colour as a fly?
It's the same colour as, when he goes into the teleporter things and you get that like green misty stuff. It's the same colour as that.
I thought it was going to be green. Yeah.
I think there's other versions of it you can probably get, but I just got it on like green because I think it was actually like an exclusive somewhere, but I picked it up and I thought, I'm having that.
Yeah, why not? Have you seen The Fly 2?
No, I'm not really sure if I want to, in truthfulness, because some things don't need sequels.
Yeah, I've heard it's a bit naff. to be generous.
Yeah, I've got no interest in it, to be honest. I think some films just don't need sequels. I'll end up watching it at some point. I'm saying that I'm not going to watch it. I will end up bloody watching it, knowing my luck.
I mean, considering that even on Rotten Tomatoes, general consensus is 29%.
Well, kind of just sums it up, really. I mean,
It does a little bit, but then I suppose that one doesn't really need a sequel. It's a bit weird.
I think it's only really a sequel because of, how much of a success The Fly was.
Yeah,
because that's just the way it works. It's like when something makes a lot of money, they come up with a sequel just to cash in on even more money, and it never works. They're never going to learn like other.
Yeah. No.
It's like, this has made like hundreds of millions of dollars. We'll make a sequel that's going to do just as good. But it's not. It's going to do just as bad.
Well, the thing is, like back in that day, it was very difficult for a sequel to actually be successful. That's one of the reasons why when Disney did their animated films, any sequels or anything just went straight to video.
Yeah.
Because they weren't going to be profitable. Which is funny because for then 10 to 15 years, exact opposite. Sequels were doing better. And look at us now. Interesting that, isn't it? Again, it's all connected.
It's all connected, man.
Again, it's like poetry, it rhymes, said George Lucas.
Did he?
Again. I think at one point he says it in one of the documentaries for The Phantom Menace or something as a reason to do something. I'm like, George? No.
Roses are red, violets are blue.
George.
Good guys are green, bad guys are red. Mace Windu is blue. Purple.
Yeah. Bloody Mace Windu. Next up is one that you have already mentioned as one of your honourable mentions. It's one that's I love more when every time I watch it, and that is the 2005 remake of the 1933 classic monkey film King Kong.
I love the emphasis on monkey.
King Kong. Monkey.
Because he's a big monkey.
he's a massive monkey, which is ironic because actually I think in the remake he's actually technically smaller because they basically just make him just like a bigger version of like a silverback gorilla, whereas in the 1933 film and in the modern MonsterVerse stuff, they're like, no, we don't have to do that. We'll just make him like a giant Bigfoot, essentially.
Kongfoot.
Best Bigfoot film ever. Kongfoot. Big Kong. But yeah, this one I remember watching a lot as a kid, and I'm sure I might have mentioned this when talking about like monster movies. I think on Graveyard Chit Chat, I feel like I did.
I'm pretty sure you
came up in conversation. Yeah. Because I mean, I haven't watched the extended one that often, which is like 3 hours and 20 minutes. The actual is like borderline 3 hours. But I've always loved the way that they retool the original film. Because let's face it, there's some questionable decisions in that original film. It doesn't really fly anymore. So Peter Jackson's idea is to, well, no, we'll just have them go off to Skull Island, but they're going to be making a movie. So we can just use that original movie as the basis for that and kind of poke fun at it. And I was like, that's a genius idea.
Yeah, it's a good play.
Like you even have I didn't realize that at the time because I hadn't seen the original until only like a couple of years ago. And then when I heard that original dialogue in that, I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. Very different. At least in the original film, it doesn't take Kong nearly as long to fall off the top of the Empire State Building.
I was going to say, I mean, I haven't actually watched the 33 film. It is in my list to watch it, but I imagine, like, you know, with something like that, it's going to take them like 5 solid minutes to fall, not seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the original for the most part, but I do like the way that they kind of honor that in the new one, like in the sequence when he's like shown off to the people of New York as like the 8th wonder of the world, and you've got the people dressed as like the natives, and you've got that like specific music playing. That's straight out of the original film, which I really love. It's just like a loving tribute to it, but it's still able to do its own thing,
which is what you want in a remake. To be honest, that's what a remake should be.
And no offense, this version of Skull Island is absolutely terrifying. Like, it really is like a proper nightmare place to live in.
I'm actually really kind of gutted that, you know, I mean, with Kong Skull Island, whenever that came out, you know, the MonsterVerse stuff, you go to Skull Island and it just looks so it just looks tame compared to what this is. Like, this is an absolute nightmare. I mean, there's like a giant blooming scorpion and whatever dinosaur it's called. You corrected me on because it's not a T-Rex, it's a whatever you call it.
The Statosaurus Rex.
The Statosaurus Rex, when it kind of sounds like Pistachiosaurus Rex.
Pistachosaurus.
Mustachosaurus Rex. Pistachosaurus.
But that's exactly that. It's like you say. I mean, that version of Skull Island in the 2005 film just feels a lot more creative and imaginative compared to the new one, where it's just because
it's literally like
giant bat.
The what are they in Kong Skull Island? It's the skull crawlers, isn't it?
I mean, like, the skull crawlers are quite interesting,
but I mean, it's nothing on like how terrifying it actually feels when you get shots of it. I mean, like, Kong isn't the only danger on the island in the 2005 film. Like, he really isn't. You go through a cave and there's just some gigantic insect that is like half your size.
Yeah, we did mention. I'm sure we mentioned the video game that it's based on, didn't we?
Because I mentioned that I played it and you found it too hard.
I found it too hard and too scary once we got to the centipedes. I was like, no, never mind. I'm going to give up now immediately. So I never got the chance to play as giant monkey.
It was fun.
Annoyingly.
Very fun.
It was very fun, apparently. I wouldn't know. But this one I've always loved. I mean, I am still waiting to get it in 4K, to be honest. I got it a couple of years ago, but it never actually arrived, which was I was always really annoyed by that. But I've got this version which has got like 12-13 hours of bonus features, so I can just feast on that for like an entire day.
Alright, Nosferatu, calm down.
God.
It's going to be like a background shot of you just like on the director's neck. Just give me your knowledge, Jackson.
Yeah, probably. I want to know.
No,
not that.
We're not doing that. No more Indiana Jones for a very, very long time.
What are you talking about, Dan? There wasn't an Indiana Jones film recently.
Right.
Didn't happen.
With Archimedes' alarm clock.
Archimedes' alarm clock. Archimedes' alarm compass. I can't really think of one for this episode.
Archimedes' egg timer.
Doesn't. Yeah, I'll take it. But yes, King Kong 2005 for me. Moving back over to my original co-host.
I mean, these. I'm not going to put these in order, so I'm just going to like pick and choose.
Nah,
really.
that's fine.
Next, we have a film from 2020.
Why is it that I always get really freaked out when he be like, it's from 2020? I'm like, there was nothing good in 2020.
Well, I
really
think you're
wasn't.
going to beg to differ when I tell you the name of this, because you like this film, and so do I.
Cack.
No, it's not Cack.
Oh. No, I can't remember.
It is a remake of the 1933 film. I'm actually surprised you haven't got it, to be honest.
I'm trying to think.
The Invisible Man.
Oh, cack! Jesus! Double cack. Oh man, I didn't think to put on The Invisible Man because I really like that one.
See, that was actually one of the first ones I put on as well.
I'm gonna add that on right now, and we're just gonna chat about it for a bit.
I really like this film, man. I mean, I haven't properly watched the original one. I mean, I'm getting very close to watching it. I'm just trying to make my way through some.
I did, and I do actually
Japanese
that one.
Kaiju turtle films.
Just you don't have.
I've only got 3 more to
going to
go,
talk about
so
those.
it's fine.
Oh well, that's all right. Then you've only got 3 more.
It's just great the fact that like the first film is just the Invisible Man just screwing with people, and this one is just all out horror.
Oh, it's perfect for that, I think. I mean, I actually really appreciate the fact that the original one isn't really a horror film. It's just like, first of all, it's pure sci-fi, but then it's also kind of almost a comedy.
When it's just screwing with people, like tapping people on the shoulder and that, like, who's there?
Yeah. And then, of course, the iconic design of like the bandages and the sunglasses. I always really liked that one. But no, this one really gets you. It's brilliant in that regard.
It's fantastic. I really like it. It's you know what it is. I surprisingly don't own the score for it, and I am quite tempted with the score on it because I mean, with every film I've seen, I always like 9 times out of 10 I like the scores. But I'm just running out of room in truthfulness.
I don't actually remember the score for this one. I mean, it happens on occasionally.
It's very good, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, the film is just very good.
Score for us?
But no, I really like this film because it's just a step up from... I mean, yeah, he does mess with people, but it's in more of a sinister way, I think. It's like there's no more tapping on the shoulder.
Yeah.
It's like he's grabbing you by the shoulder and he's going to chuck you against a wall.
But I think as well, it works with the paranoia as well because no one's going to believe you.
I mean, that scene in the restaurant.
Yeah, I remember.
That scene.
That was... I'm going to have to rewatch it, actually. I'm going to have to.
Yes, see, you're just glad I exist because I can just remind you of a great film like The Invisible Man from 2020.
Or you can make us watch the Halloween franchise.
Sorry, the what franchise?
The Christmas franchise. Christmas Resurrection.
Isn't that just the Black Christmas remake, which I will never, ever, ever watch, probably?
Please
I'm not
don't.
I'm gonna.
No. You will not exist. Sorry.
That does. But no, I had to go with The Invisible Man because I mean I've only watched it once, surprisingly, and I will rewatch it at some point because I really like it, but I kind of want to watch the original properly and then maybe go to this before starting the. I mean, because I know there's a few sequels to the 1933 one. I know there's like the Invisible Man's Revenge or something it's called.
Something like as generic.
I mean,
as
I don't
that,
think
yeah.
there's as many as like the Frankenstein and Dracula and Wolfman sequels. When they do like the crossovers and stuff like that. I think it's just 2 other films. But nah, I had to go with the Invisible Man from 2020 by Lee Whannell.
But yeah, with the Invisible Man, yeah, I can definitely agree. I think again, it's way better than the original film, and I do like the original, but mostly just because I was just surprised. Funny enough, though, actually, it's got the exact same rating. Both are 4 out of 5.
And that's weird coming from you as well, especially from a 30s film as well. Because I mean, the only like old films that you've really like given high opinion on is Nosferatu.
There's Nosferatu and Metropolis, from 1927. That one, some people don't like, But no, I mean, like, the original Invisible Man just really surprised me. I think because when I was going through a lot of the Universal ones, I was like, this is a bit naff, actually, as it turns out. Especially with Creature from the Black Lagoon, I was just not a fan of that. Despite the constant hand appearing. It's like, oh my god, it's the creature! I forgot he was there.
It's only been about 2
minutes ago. I haven't seen that
ago.
shot for about 17 seconds. And then he's still coming. And then it's like, come on, hurry up. Ugh. Bloody Archimedes alarm hand. There we go, I've got it.
It's only been about 17 seconds since I last saw the creature.
Oh god. But yeah, I can definitely agree with the Invisible Man. Sticking with Universal though, this is my last one before I talk about some other stuff later.
I think I know what this one's going to be.
Take a guess.
The Wolfman.
I was going to class that as an honorable mention.
Really?
Because I do like that one. I've gone on record and saying that I do like that one. I think it's better than the original as well. But I don't particularly like the original anyway. So it doesn't take much. I know that's going to be a topic at some point on Graveyard Chit Chat. I don't know if that's discussing the original first, or if this is referencing the remake later on, because I'll have something to say.
I think a bit of both, to be honest, because I mean, I have no intention of bringing the other sequels into it, so it'll probably just be the original and the remake.
No.
Because the sequels are...
I'm not watching them.
Whew.
They were released.
Yeah, they were.
Might as well have been written by AI. It's ironic.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Ironic. It is a Universal one, though.
Well, it's not Invisible Man. It's not...
No.
It's not the Wolfman. I'm trying to actually think of, like... Is it a Frankenstein remake?
No. There is no Frankenstein remake that is any good. Off the top of my head. Outside of Van
the
Helsing.
Mary Shelley's one from the 90s was actually alright, but anyway.
Anyway.
No, I don't know.
No.
Nah.
If you have a look at my letterboxd, you don't have to look now. He's about to.
When you say that, I'm obviously gonna.
Well, yeah, obviously. If you look at my 4 favourites that's on there, and look at number 2.
Oh!
Oh!
So that didn't... Well, to be honest, I mean, The Mummy is kind of the overlooked one out of Universal
for reference,
monsters,
we're talking about The Mummy from 1999, if that wasn't obvious enough. By, like, the...
I mean, yeah,
by,
you
like, the gasp.
really like this film.
I adore this film. Like, I've said for years, I was like, no, my favourite film is Return of the Jedi. Then for a couple of years, I was like, no, it's The Lion King. And before I went with Dog Soldiers, like, I settled on that, because I realised, yeah, of course it's going to be that one. For a good few months, I had The Mummy as my favourite, because I watched it religiously as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I was just so fascinated by ancient Egypt, and I still am. I think anyone with a brain is fascinated by that.
Anyone with a brain. Which is kind of ironic considering what they do with mummification.
Yeah. Ironic, as it turns out. Yeah. Because I'm not too big on the original film from the 30s. This film doesn't really... I mean, it is very much its own thing. It's like, we could do horror. No, let's do a bit of horror, but let's do, like, action-adventure, Indiana Jones-esque, but just...
Yeah, I mean, in a simple term, it's kind of just Indiana Jones with just undertones of horror, I think, is the best way to describe it.
Which is ironic, because that is essentially what Indiana Jones is as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But it still feels like its own thing. Like, everyone's great in this. I mean, Brendan Fraser, like... I've said it before, he's brilliant in this.
I have a confession to make.
Bugger. You actually hate this film.
I'm not really too big on it.
Wow.
I mean, you've scored this like a solid 5 out of 5, yeah?
It's about as solid as the Book of the Dead.
I gave this a 3 out of 5.
You know, I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. If people have been listening, I am still taking requests for like a new co-host.
Ow.
Because Dan's just talking rubbish now.
He's just talking absolute smack.
Yes, he's talking absolute smack.
He's talking as if he had mummified bandages in his gob.
Right now, I wish he was. Really wish I'm going to shove a load of scarab beetles all over you.
It's fine.
Make him eat you alive.
It's fine, but maybe that's just because, I mean, you've watched this absolutely religiously. I've only watched it twice.
Yeah, same. Yeah, did twice.
No, like, twice. Regan, there should be another like 0 on the end of that too.
It's just such an easy watch. Like regardless of like your mood that you're in, it's like, yeah, I'll just put on The Mummy.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, from the time watching it, it's definitely an easy film to watch. I mean, you don't have to just think about it. You just put it on, and it's like, I can just sit back and enjoy this.
I mean, granted, I'm gonna, the CGI is
aged.
It's CGI.
It's aged.
It's aged about as savagely as Imhotep did, which is quite a bit.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it kind of just fits with the charm of it, so I don't mind. Whereas something like The Mummy Returns, some of the CG and that does actually kind of offend me.
Yeah.
I don't need CGI The Rock. If I want that, let's go and watch Black Adam, where it doesn't look any better, frankly. Just has less pincers.
Snip, snip.
God damn it. No, it's... I'm not shocked that you don't like it, or at least you think it's fine. I'll disagree with you every single day, as I do all the time anyway. But no, this one's always been really special. It was also my granddad's favorite film as well, so I kind of like I end up falling into that. In the same way that Dog Soldiers: Return of the Jedi is my dad's favorite.
Yeah.
Lion King is no one's favorite. It's just me. Damn it. But yeah, again, The Mummy got very, very close to topping Dog Soldiers on a couple of occasions. But I think it was when I rewatched this quite recently. Actually, I think it was when we talked about Dog Soldiers. I was like, oh, bugger, yeah, it is actually Dog Soldiers. That is actually my favourite film. It's not a remake, though. I can't account it.
No, it's not.
Phew, thank God.
Next up is a film from 2014. I believe the director behind this actually holds... Well, his longest film happens to be 4 hours friggin' long.
Oh.
Oh.
Wait, hang on a second. What year did you say it was?
Not 2014, Jesus.
Throwing me off the scent. I was like, there's no other director that's released a film in 2014 and done a film that's 4 hours long to my knowledge.
No, I think I've just mistakenly put a 4. A 1 rather.
That seems fair.
No, it is Dawn of the Dead from 2004 by Zack Snyder.
Zack Snyder.
It turns out I actually watched the remake of Dawn of the Dead before I actually watched the original.
Exactly the same. I haven't seen the original. But then I wasn't big on Night of the Living Dead, so I'm now immediately biased towards any of them. I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point. Yeah.
Cute. I really like it, actually. I mean, it's one of the better remakes. It's it's in nowhere to the likes of The Thing or even The Fly. But it's still very good. It's a lot more, well, up to date, I think, considering, like, I think it was 73 Dawn of the Dead came out. I mean, it just looks a bit more polished and stuff like this. It's a lot more actiony, but then again, Zack Snyder's behind it, he's helming it, it's gonna be.
Yeah, I remember quite enjoying it. But it's I don't remember it too much. Especially because it doesn't feel entirely like a Zack Snyder film. But then I suppose
it doesn't.
It is his first film, so naturally he's not going to get all the tropes there and then. I do remember kind of enjoying it. I've said before on other episodes, not on this, but on Graveyard Chit Chat, I'm not massive on zombies. I'm quite niche, like. But that one I quite enjoyed. I even quite liked Army of the Dead, to be honest, as well. That one was pretty good.
I kind of forget they helmed that as well.
I kind of forget as well until, like, I go onto Netflix and I was like, oh yeah, it's there. Oh
yeah. But no, I still really like this all these years on. I mean, I've only watched it a couple times. I mean, I might rewatch it at some point this year. But, by doing that, I've kind of got to visit, like, the original Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead. Like, just a lot of Romero zombie stuff, because, it's homage to him after all. But, no, I really liked it, so I figured, well, why not go with Zack Snyder's 2004 debut film, Dawn of the Dead. Next one is a film from 2017. I know I've got this one right, because I've double-checked.
It's The Mummy.
No.
Good.
No. I said we were going to do good ones, not...
I mean, like, you've already sunk pretty low.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how much further you can go.
You've sunk low.
Dare you. 2017. Oh, is it clowning around?
I mean, there's a clown in it, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not the second one, so it's not shit. It's just it.
No, it is.
Because that one really
2017. Is. Yeah, I mean, but to be honest, I've never liked the second part of its story, even in the original.
No.
I've never liked it. I've always found
terrible.
It ridiculously boring.
Yeah,
but I really like this. I mean, I've watched the original. It's all right. I mean, it just doesn't really work as a TV movie. I think it's pretty naff, in truthfulness. But this really does. It's pretty darn terrifying, if I may say so.
Yeah, I did actually. I rewatched just a bit of it. I always forget, because I mean, I've only seen the film once. I saw it in cinemas. Rare time I went and go and see a horror film in a cinema back at that point. The bit that always freaked me out was the moment when Pennywise comes out of the fridge and he's all like bent and stuff, and he turns stuff back around.
Oh yeah.
And he just sort of like prance, like creeping towards. I forget the kid's name, but it's at the point when he's got like his broken arm, and he's just messing with him, just sort of like nudging closer and just like pretending to bite him and stuff like that. That bit I always remember actually getting quite freaked out by. But I think what made that one work actually was the fact that the same reason that story works at that point is because it's focusing on the kids. So that horror works just a little bit more than it does with adults, realistically.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get the idea behind the second part of it, but like it's just it's nothing compared to the original. Like the original story of just the kids. Like I'm not interested when they're adults. I'm not interested one bit.
Yeah. Even though the casting was on point.
Oh yeah, the casting was great for it, but again, like, I mean, the second one to this, well, the sequel to this, it's still better than the second part of the original film, like by a long shot. I mean, it's not great, but like, oof, my goodness me. No, I really like this. I kind of wish I saw it in cinema, but when I went into this, no, I surprisingly didn't. Really wanted to as well, but just didn't see it. I think the moment you see Georgie literally get his arm ripped off by Pennywise's many teeth, it's just like, Jesus,
I wasn't expecting
Christ.
That.
Yeah, neither was I.
But then it's, I mean, this one is incredibly bloody and violent.
Oh,
for sure.
Just a bit.
Yeah, it doesn't really hold back. at all.
No, it's pretty brutal.
No, actually, the other bit that actually, just because I have actually thought of just like one more film, it's not actually horror. So I'll have to address it briefly because Dan doesn't care.
I know what this one's going to be. This is going to be the...
No, you don't. You've got absolutely no idea. Can't even guess this.
It's the Ghostbusters, isn't it? Yeah, that's a film. Kind of forget that's a good... That's
Barely.
A film. Probably a good thing. Because it's absolutely rubbish.
It's not even rubbish, mate. It's just offensive. Funnily enough. Now, this is actually Steven Spielberg's remake of West Side Story, actually from a couple of years ago. I completely... I mean, again, I do really like the original, actually. I mean, I'm saying this briefly because it's a musical. This is Dan. He loves musicals.
No, he does not.
No, he doesn't. But yeah, there was just like a few issues I had with the original that this one kind of fixed for me, so technically it is actually better for me. 2.5 hours long though. Still really long.
Yike.
Have wanted to rewatch it again for a while, but yeah, I just randomly remembered that's a remake that I do actually really like.
Wouldn't know.
Wouldn't know. Don't care.
I literally wouldn't know.
Would rather watch The Mummy from 2017.
I would.
Or The Mummy from 1999, you know, the one I don't like.
I'd rather watch The Mummy Tomb of the Emperor Dragon's turd than...
Excuse me. Dan.
I hate that film so much.
You really hated it. You know, to think, actually, technically, it's 15 years old this year.
We're not doing a friggin' episode on it.
Well, depending on scheduling and what movies actually get released this year now, it's entirely possible.
I'd rather be actually devoured by that metaphorical dragon and shat out than ever having to watch it ever again.
Jesus.
That's a pretty extreme length.
That is extremely... Like,
or even for matter of fact, I'd rather just be thrown to the stupid Yetis and just torn to bits.
The Yetis aren't stupid, I mean, they're silly.
Yes, exactly. They're not stupid, they're just silly.
Okay, I suppose we'll move on to your final one.
Well, technically, yeah. You mentioned this one, film from 2013.
Oh yeah, that one.
Evil Dead. We did do an episode on Graveyard Chit Chat just covering that one as well as the Evil Dead franchise, and that episode still hurts to listen to sometimes.
Yes, it does.
Still tugs at the old heartstring every now and then.
There's a heartstring?
Nah.
Oh, that's not... Oh.
There was until you decided
to
just shit all over my favourite film.
It's not your favourite film, though.
It's one of my favourite films.
Yeah. And you did that with The Mummy for me. Except you still think that one's alright.
Exactly.
I don't think original Evil Dead's alright.
Exactly.
Evil Dead 2 was good, though. I like that one. Which actually, technically, I could count that as a remake.
You could.
Technically, because it is, really.
I mean, it's a pre-make in ways. Sequel make.
C-make. Damn it, Dan.
I haven't done anything. You're the one with your mind in the gutter.
I mean, yeah, that's just my life.
Yeah, I still really like it. It's brutal as hell. And, I mean, 30,000 of gallons of prop blood used or something like that. Like, a stupid amount of fake blood used. And it's very, very gory.
Yeah, very. Exceedingly.
Can
it's
totally see why, people do actually quite like the remake compared to the original.
It was... A lot of it just came down to the fact that the characters just didn't annoy me nearly as much.
Yeah.
But again, that comes down to personal preference. And I even said at the time, if I'd seen it years ago, I might have liked it more.
Who knows?
How awkward timing.
Yeah, could have used Archimedes' alarm clock for that. Maybe change some things around a bit.
No, Dan, we've already established if I try and do that, I'm not going to go back to 1987. I'm going to go back to the Battle of Syracuse in bloody 912 BC or whatever bloody year it is. 612. I don't care.
Something like that. Okay, last but not least, well, it is least because it's the last one, is a film from 2002. It is directed by Gore Verbinski.
It is.
The Ring.
The Ring.
Yes. Again, much like with Dawn of the Dead, I actually saw the remake of it before I saw Ringu.
I still haven't seen the remake. Actually,
it's actually quite good. I mean, it's not like an absolutely phenomenal remake in any means necessary, but it is actually quite good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's basically, well, you know what it's like with Godzilla films. It's when basically they get Americanized and stuff like that. It's not actually too bad, to be honest, and that's always an off-put for me. Like, you know, I mean, Shin Godzilla.
It's clever because purple represents pain.
No, we're not interested in your goddamn feces. You know what it is? I mean, again, I'm just going to reference this again. I'd rather be chewed up in Shin Godzilla's gigantic molars and pooped out than ever having to watch Tomb of the Emperor Dragon again.
Dan, I don't think he has molars.
I mean, the dude's got a lot of weird teeth. He needs to go to a dentist.
That's my biggest issue with your statement, is that that's probably not the right tooth.
The guy needs to go to a dentist. Kaiju dentist or something like that.
Kaiju dentist. Isn't that just like a thing in like a Gamera film? It probably is at some point.
I mean, he's fought that many monsters. It's no wonder his teeth are a bit knocked out. But no, it's very good, and it is actually quite creepy, despite it being a remake of an already creepy film. I mean, look, Ringu is phenomenal. I really like Ringu. I know there's actually, I think it's a prequel to Ringu. Ring Zero or something it's called. I don't know if it's a prequel.
I'm sure it's from the original. Well, it's from the original director, or I think the American Ring 2, I think, is from the original Ringu director, but ended up being quite naff.
Yeah, because I know that a lot of people are a bit mixed with Ring 2 because apparently it's quite reliant on CGI, which I kind of expect, to be honest.
And then there's Rings, whereas instead of a videotape, it's
DVDs.
I'm sure that Chris Stuckman made fun of it in his review of it, but it's like, it was QuickTime files.
Oh, for God's sake. QuickTime files.
Ringu has gone digital.
Oh, for God's sake. Now, last bit on the Ring, I still think the whole reveal of the first person who's watched the tape with the really like mangled up face, much like with the original film, it's still really creepy to this day.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. Yeah. I think like the closest like similarity to that recently is probably something like Smile. I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a lot of similarity between it. And I know a lot of people really didn't like Smile, but I thought it was really quite friggin' disturbing.
Yeah, I thought it was quite good. I think I did. Can't actually remember now, to be honest.
I mean, I gave it a 4 out of 5.
I probably also gave it a 4 out of 5. I mean, yeah, for what it was, I thought it was pretty good, all things considering.
Yeah, well, that's everything I've got. I mean, I was going to mention the 1979 Nosferatu, but I don't know how I feel about that, because I think it's more of a reboot in ways.
I mean, it's kind of a weird... It's, like I said at the beginning, it's kind of like a weird middle ground where it's a remake of the original film, but it's also just a more faithful adaptation of the novel. Yeah. So it's a weird sort of blend.
It's just sort of like stuck in the middle boundary, really.
Though we both did really like it, though.
Oh, yeah. Terrific film.
The original's better.
Yeah.
It just is. But that's why I thought it was interesting to talk about remakes, because there's just so many of them these days, mostly from Disney, that just are so...
And some of them are just crap, by the way.
Well,
if we haven't established that.
Well, yeah, I don't even think I even liked a single one off the top of my head. Now, granted, I gave up after 2019. I think I might have seen bits and bobs. I know my girlfriend saw the recent Little Mermaid remake. Wasn't big on it. Talking to us about it in like full spoilerific fashion. I was just like, this just sounds funny. This sounds funny. But that's exactly. I mean, I think for a lot of people, just immediate assumption is Remake is going to be naff. Now, we have proven there is some that work. Though conveniently, all of them are from yesteryear. I think actually the most recent one I think you said was it The Invisible Man? Actually, I think.
2020.
So it does happen every now and again, but for the most part, it's just an avenue that Hollywood really needs.
I don't
think
they're as relentless as they used to be. I mean, I know Disney obviously pump out as many as they possibly can, but in terms of horror, I mean, I don't know if there's one coming up. I mean, there probably is. I mean, The Exorcist, but again, that's by the same guy who did her 40-ween, so it'll be in reboot territory, more than likely.
As far as I know, I think it's a direct sequel.
Oh, one of the two.
I think, because I know that Linda Blair's in it, briefly.
Yeah.
But not interested in that one.
So it's the 50th then?
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting talking about remakes. So I think this is probably going to be the more fun episode, or was the most fun episode compared to next week. Because as I hinted before, this is now a change to the schedule. I mean, I know on Instagram I said the next week it's going to be Halo 3 ODST. I kind of changed that. Mostly, because this is easily like the biggest thing that happened in the film industry for a very, very long time. So I thought it would be an interesting topic. This is obviously, of course, with the writer's strike and now the actor's strike. First time that's happened together since 1960.
Yeah, I was looking at that the other day.
And there's been some interesting things said.
There is.
And the worst thing is, this wasn't even... I mean, we'll get into this next week, but the whole idea of that episode originally stemmed for Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, not happening now.
Yeah, because pretty much everyone's just pulled out.
Yeah, because of all this stuff. There's also stuff with VFX artists calling stuff out in Hollywood, same with animation artists, a lot of stuff. And it needs talked about, frankly.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's the last time we talk negatively for a while.
Don't
at least until Halo 5.
don't count.
But yes, thank you very much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed it. As ever, any kind of support would be lovely. All the platforms we listen to, of course, in the description, and all our social media profiles as well. Make sure to be following them for any updates. Yeah, we will see you next week for the real podcasters on Hollywood and the things they're doing. But of course, we will have another episode of Graveyard Chit Chat out before then. What are we talking about, Dan?
We are talking
something
about
with teeth.
Steven Spielberg's 1975 film Jaws.
Steven Spielberg.
Yes.
Jaws. Steven Spielberg's Jaws.
Houdini.
Picturing that coming out with the shark, and that sounds kind of hilarious. He's just wearing a hood, and all you can see is just like a couple of yellow eyes and fins.
I want that now.
We're
talking about Jaws. I'm thoroughly looking forward to that. I do plan on rewatching it before the episode as well.
I've watched the final 20 minutes so far. For some reason, it just sort of happened.
You just skipped all of the film until the final 20 minutes.
No. Oh yeah, the rest of it's rubbish. No. No, it just happened to be on TV, and I watched like the final 20 minutes. Like, oh yeah, I forgot about this bit. I do have to rewatch it. Actually, it's been a very long time since I watched it. But yes, you can look forward to that on Graveyard Chit Chat very, very soon. As I say, thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next week, and until then, it's goodbye from Dan.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.